Okay friends, one of the first things we have to do to get started on this job is to safely raise and support the rear of the vehicle so the wheel's off the ground, and then we can start removing all of our lug nuts, then the wheel. Okay, now that the wheel's off of here, we have a nice clear view of where we have to start working. The first thing I want to do is go ahead and pinch off the flow of brake fluid down to the caliper. When we do this, be very careful not to damage your flex hose. So now on the back side of the caliper, right where your e-brake cable comes up to, you're going to be able to see that there's a bracket, and on that bracket, it has a little clip. Go ahead and slide that clip out of there. Inspect your clip, make sure it's in good condition. If it's not, you need to make sure you go ahead and replace this. Alright, now I've got it so the e-brake cable can move around inside this bracket. Let's move along to removing this bolt right here. Being careful for our ABS wire, let's go ahead and break this free. Alright, so now we have it so this is broken free. You're going to notice that the cable doesn't want to come out of this area yet. The next thing we're going to do is remove our two caliper bracket bolts. There's one of the caliper bracket bolts right there, and the other one's located up top. Alright, now once you have this one nice and loose, leave it in there just a couple threads, and then we're going to remove the upper bolt as well. This one we'll remove fully. Remove the lower bolt fully. Now we can carefully remove the caliper, and then of course we'll slide this off of here as well. On the back side of the caliper, you can see exactly where the flex hose connects onto it with a banjo bolt. We need to go ahead and remove this banjo bolt, but keep in mind there's going to be brake fluid, so make sure you have a bucket and of course hand protection. Grab your flex hose, break it free from the caliper. Carefully set that aside so if anything does come out of it, it'll go into your collection bucket. Now at this point, if you're going to be reusing your pads, you need to go ahead and take them right out of here. This is going to be very simple. I'm just going to take that outer pad and go ahead and press it right like this, and then I can slide it out. At that point, you can carefully inspect your pads and make sure they're still good to go. Do the same to the inner pad, and then we'll recycle this caliper. Okay, now it's going to be time to start preparing our brand new caliper for installation. The first thing I'm going to do is remove this bracket right here. You remember this bolt? Go ahead and take it right out. We're going to set this aside so we can install it in a minute. The next thing we're going to do is remove our caliper from the bracket. Okay, so now at this point we can start preparing the bracket itself. What I mean by that is we're going to carefully grab onto these slider pins right here, pop them right off of the caliper bracket. Sometimes you might have to use this to remove the boot. We'll slide this right out of here and then inspect it. If you think it needs more grease, go ahead and add a little bit more. Any of the grease that you happen to see laying around on the end right here, we can just take a little drop of that and I'm going to put it right along this groove right here. A little bit more, and I'm going to put it along the groove on the other side of that slider pin, right up in here. Now at this point, we can slide everything back together. And then I'm going to give everything a twist, and that's going to help ensure that the grease made its way in, and that's going to help also make sure that moisture doesn't make its way in as well. And then of course just do the same to the other side. Once you have your slider pins done, the next thing we're going to do is remove these caliper bracket tins right here. Just take a little bit of caliper grease and come along the areas that the tin rides on. This is going to help with vibration dampening and noise reduction overall. Once you have grease on there, go ahead and put the slider tin back in there, and then squeeze in the center right here. This is where the rotor is going to be, but it's also where the locking tabs are that hold the tin on there. Go ahead and do the same to the other side. Next, we're going to add a little bit of caliper grease along the piston and then along the back side of each of these ears. We have our caliper bracket bolts. Make sure the threads are clean, and then of course make sure you add some red thread locker. The rest of the bolts, a little bit of thread locker couldn't hurt. The next thing we're going to want to do is inspect our flex hose. You want to make sure you don't have your copper gaskets on there. Any existing copper gasket has to be removed before we can get ready to install our caliper. Now at this point we can put our caliper bracket back on the vehicle. We'll take our two mounting bolts, we'll start them in. Once we snug them up, we'll torque them to 52 foot-pounds. Now it's going to be time to install our brake pads. Let's carefully slide these in here. I like to roll them in from the bottom and then up to the top part. There we are. Make sure they can flow around easily. Let's remove the bracket from the e-brake cable. Now we can grab the rest of our caliper. We're going to take this and slide our e-brake cable right into the bracket here where it belongs. Now I'll slide this right onto the caliper bracket, start in both of my bolts, and then we'll snug them up and torque them to 19 foot-pounds. Now it's time to install our mounting bracket here. Just go ahead and take it and slide it right over that cable and then bring it down to where it belongs. Once you have that latched in, we're going to come like this. We'll slide this into its little piton hole there, and then we'll put in our mounting bolt. Make sure it's nice and tight. Make sure you put on your locking clip. Grab your cable, make sure it's secure. Now it's going to be time to install our flex hose to the caliper. Take a second and ensure that you don't have one of your original or old copper gaskets on this banjo bolt. Assuming it's nice and clean, go ahead and slide on your brand new crush washer here, or crush gasket. And then we're going to take this and we're going to come through this side so it's facing towards where this little piton is. Take that other crush washer or gasket, put it right on there, and then we're going to connect this into the caliper. Start this in there. Make sure that the piton on the flex hose lines up with the hole on the actual caliper itself as you start to snug this up. Now when you go to tighten this, you want to make sure that you have it completely bottomed out. After it's bottomed out, you need to continue tightening approximately 1/8 of a turn. The reason why that is because we want to try to crush down these copper washers or gaskets. Grab that flex hose, give it a wiggle. If it moves around on the caliper, you probably didn't put the piton into the caliper hole there, and of course you're going to have an issue. This feels great. Let's get these off of there. Get this cover off of your bleeder screw. We'll set that aside because we're going to need to reuse it. And now we're going to open up the bleeder screw right here. Before you go ahead and start bleeding your brake system, make sure that your master cylinder is topped off with brand new fresh fluid. If you need to know what kind, just take a look at the cap. It should say .3. Okay, now it's time to manually bleed the brakes. What I mean by that is we're going to need 2 people to do this. I need somebody up inside the car getting ready to pump that brake pedal for me. Me personally, I'm going to be outside here with my wrench getting ready to open up this bleeder screw. Things to think about is brake fluid's going to be coming out of this, so you need to have hand and eye protection at all times, of course. We've had it throughout the whole video, but I'm going to re-mention it now. Aside from that, you want to make sure you have a nice collection bucket underneath the area. Now what we need to do is have the person inside the car slowly pump up the brake pedal 3 to 5 times and then hold it on the last pump. Go ahead and pump up the brakes, please. Okay, as you saw when I was doing that, I had some air coming out of there. When you're bleeding the brakes, you want to keep doing this until you make sure you see no air coming out of the system. It needs to be just a steady trickle of fluid only. Go ahead and pump up those brakes again. That one looked a lot better, but I did see some air, so let's go ahead and do it again. Once again, we saw some air. This isn't a race. We're trying to get it done right. Go ahead and pump it up again, please. Okay, now on that last pump, you saw that there was no air bubbles coming out of there. For me personally, I feel confident that this looks good. If you wanted to, you can go ahead and bleed it again and just ensure that there's no air. Once you're sure that you're all done, go ahead and close that off so it's nice and snug, and then we're going to clean off the area from any brake fluid, then of course cap it off. Let's get the wheel back up on here. We'll start all of our lug nuts on, bottom them out, get the wheel on the ground, then torque them to 100 foot-pounds. Torqued. Once again, double check your master cylinder, make sure it's full with .3 brake fluid. Okay friends, so we got our caliper in there. What's left to do now? If you have the other side, go ahead and do the exact same thing to the other side as well. After that, go ahead and close the hood and take it for a road test.